Okay, so here we are, 2001 Jaguar XJR. We're kind of picking up mid-job here, but I figured I'd just make a quick video here in case anybody else had this problem, because I have seen that it's fairly common. Basically, my trunk release stopped working, and unfortunately, it caused me a whole lot of headache over the course of the past 2 years, and I'm finally getting around to fixing it. There's no exact solution to it. You can only find information on the forums and stuff like that, so I'm kind of just like trying to move that information to YouTube. It's usually my first go-to when it comes to fixing something. Basically, I started here, ripped this all apart. Turns out this is all for nothing. All this was just a bunch of clips and then pull the strap off. You will need to pop this rivet here and this rivet here, and probably that one there just to be safe. I actually didn't pop that one off. Probably should have though. You'll have to rip somewhere around here. I actually can't see the hole now that it's gone. Oh, right there. That one, you'll have to rip that little clip out. It's the same, just need a interior removal tool to get it out. Then you can pull this back and you kind of see where I've already made the discovery here. Basically, there'll be 2 zip ties holding this harness loom. It holds it right there. Just cut those 2 zip ties, and this, all you have to do, that's why you have to have this removed here, because to give it a little bit of freedom. You just kind of pull back and the harness is like tucked inside there. You see that? You can already see where our problem is here. Yeah, I can see immediately, and I'll show pictures of what it looked like before I took it apart. But you can see where all these little holes were, because it was like rubbing through in a couple places. And you can see the shape of this is like a complete 90-degree. Basically, I guess what was happening, you can probably move the trunk lid here. Like when it's down, it's kind of like at a 90-degree angle, and when you pull it up, it straightens itself out. And just that kinking over the years causes some damage to the harness. You look at it, I actually have like 3 wires that are like actually rubbed completely through. I don't actually see the other, where this orange one's supposed to go. Now that I look at it, let me carefully pull this out here. And this just like clips up, in case I didn't say that before. Yes, yeah, I don't see, it must, oh, there it is. Oh, it's a good thing I caught that. Yeah, there it is. It's still in the loom. I'll pull this around to the back side here, and I think I'm fairly certain as to what the orientation of these wires are. I'm pretty sure it's orange to orange, black to black, but I've been wrong before. And putting butt connectors, seeing how like this is all kinked like that, it will cause problems because like butt connectors are not very flexible. But this lasted 20 years as is, so maybe it'll last another 20 years, we'll see. And if it does break, you usually just have a key, and the key will get the trunk open with no problems. Unless you lock the key in the trunk. Don't ask me how, because I'm an idiot, but that's what I was dealing with prior to this happening. What gauge is this? 20 gauge. Let's actually see what the length of the butt connectors are working with that. Okay, we'll be using the smallest ones we have, which I think actually might be these orange ones here. I don't think I've ever used these. They're really, really small. Test fit. These orange ones are what we'll be using. We'll be using a dozen of them here. And because it's really uncomfortable sitting here, I'm gonna throw this over here. Despite how small the wires are, you still gotta get the same amount of wire strip, I suppose. Basically, what led us to this situation was last year ago, actually, yes, last year ago to date, like actually 12 months ago, almost 365 days ago, I was going to go on holidays, and the day that I was supposed to go on holidays, I go to open the trunk to put tools in the back for emergency purposes, and the trunk release didn't open. And I went to put the key in, and the key would not open the trunk. This is about 6 months after I had bought the car. I looked into it, did a whole bunch of research, considered that I might have like a faulty key, because it might have been like I might have been handed a valet key, because valet keys aren't actually supposed to have access to the trunk. And then eventually, I actually went and talked to the dealer, and they looked up the ignition cylinder for the car, passed the tug test, and discovered that it was discontinued. You can't actually get ignition cylinder for these cars anymore. So what that led us to believe, between me and the parts department people, this led us to believe that the ignition cylinder on this car was at some point broken, and Jaguar was not able to provide another one. So the only way they could save this car was to pull the ignition cylinder out of a scrapyard car and take the key for that car. But in doing so, there'd be 2 different keys for the car. There'd be one for the door locks, and there'd be one for the actual ignition. Unfortunately, it looked like they had disposed of the original key for the car, and all I had was the key for ignition. So I went to Jaguar, ordered a key, cost me $250. Took about 3 weeks to get there, all whilst it was the day of my holiday that I actually discovered this. So I actually wasn't able to use my trunk, so I had everything stored in the backseat of my car like a bum. Finally, the key came, and it worked, so I officially then had 2 keys for the car. One for the doors in the trunk, and one for the ignition. Immediately after I made that solution happen and got the trunk open, it began working very consistently. So I never fixed it. That's why we're fixing it today. But as of a couple weeks ago, I'm on my holidays. Didn't go anywhere this time, like last time I took trips elsewhere. But as of a week ago, trunk release stopped working. Like it did work for a long time after that. Intermittently, like every once in a while it would stop working, but then you'd open it and close it and it would work again. Obviously that's because these wires were kind of like just barely coming frayed at that point, right? But anytime I needed to go to the trunk, I would just open open up the trunk with the key, right? And one time I had no hands, opened up the trunk. I was at a gas station. Didn't really want my keys banging around on the trunk lid of the car, so I tossed them into the trunk. Then went and did what I had to do, closed the trunk, and yeah, the keys were still in the trunk. Not my finest moment, truthfully, but you know, we just gotta own up to these things. It's an expensive lesson. I then had to buy, that's where the story gets even more interesting, is I basically had to tow the vehicle back to my place, and then I had to call Jaguar again and try to get another key for 250 bucks. They told me that the keys are now no longer 250 bucks, they're now $400. That being said, I went and looked into different options, called a locksmith, and they said key for this car, and I'll put some pictures of the keys for these cars. If you own one of these cars, if you're watching this video, you probably are familiar with them. They're like a diamond cut, what they call a tippet key. Because of that, they're very rare, and they're not very common. And the guy that I was able to find him after I called like 3 or 4 places, like before I actually found this guy. And he said he'd only done one, and it was on an Aston Martin. And the Aston Martins actually share a lot of stuff with Jaguar, so that kind of adds up. But because the key is so high security, the tool they used to insert into the lock mechanism was not actually strong enough to turn it, because it has to use these like paper thin little feelers that like kind of measure it. They basically just have a measuring tool that measures the inside of the key. Then they come and cut the key after the fact, and yeah, they have to cut a new one. Yeah, they messed up the first couple times because apparently these are so uncommon. He'd only done 3 in his entire career of these tippet style keys, and he ended up doing it backwards. Damn it, I did not crimp that right. Let's see if I can save that. So we ended up doing it backwards a couple times. Eventually we figured it out, we got into the trunk, and it cost a lot of money. But I told him, hey, like I don't have the ignition cylinder in my car, is out of a different car, so it's a different key. Therefore, if that key, if I ever lose it, I can't get a new one because I don't know what the VIN number is. And he said, oh, like would you like to make another one? Like make a copy of it? I said, you know, it's probably worth the investment because otherwise I'd be in trouble if I don't. So I said, yeah, absolutely, let's go through it, let's get another key, it's worth the money. So I handed him my ignition key, and he said, this is the key I just cut. And I said, I assure you it's not, I just pulled it off the other one. This is the one that starts my car. Then we went and tested and confirmed it was the one that started my car. And we looked at the cuts, and the cuts on the key were all the exact same as the key we had just cut, like the key for my locks. So we were a little confused. Then we looked and we noticed that one of the cuts on the key was actually, like on one side was cut a 2 and one side was cut a 3. So it turns out that the key I had originally, that this probably is the factory ignition cylinder in my car, and that it wasn't replaced, and that this was the correct key for the car. There's just a manufacturing defect 20 years ago that nobody noticed, nobody fixed for the past 20 years, 160,000 kilometers on the car, and unfortunately I was the one to find it. So what that means is I had 2 keys on my key ring. I had one for the ignition, one for the doors. Turns out they were the exact same key, only one had a chip and one didn't have a chip, because unfortunately you have to pay for both those services independently of one another. That's just the way the world works nowadays. That one got a little harder than it probably needed to. How a mistake like that goes unnoticed for so long, it baffles me. If we had a little more honorable of a system, they would have sent me a key that had a chip in it, and I would have realized that both keys have no problem starting my car, and I would have disposed of the bad key. Furthermore, how I can correct that is I can take the key to a locksmith and have them, like one that has the proper technology to cut those keys, because that's like more rare than you believe. And I can have them cut the remaining one, and I'll have a functioning key. Instead, while I was there, I said the key you cut, you might as well just put a chip in that one to make that one work. So currently, instead of using the nice shiny Jaguar key, I'm using this like Chinese knockoff brand key. The choice was either have 2 keys on my keychain. Probably didn't need to cut both those at the same time. I'm gonna tie this one up just so that I know not to cross it, but I'm sure it doesn't really matter, truthfully. My choice was either to have one key that works in the ignition, but not in the doors, and the other key works in the doors and not the ignition, have both of those on one keychain, or have a Chinese knockoff brand key that does both, and only have one key on my keychain. So currently, I just got a Chinese knockoff one, and it looks really lame. Truthfully, I should have just gotten the key that didn't have the chip, like the one that I got from the dealership. I should have just had them program that one. But I don't know if that uses the same chip that theirs does. Like, 'cause they have aftermarket ones, right? So it might have a different chip with different programming. Make it even more complicated, at some point during my ownership of this car, the door handle broke. And I think I made a video on that, but I don't think I ever posted it. So maybe if I ever have problems in the future, I'll just post that. But when the door handle failed, and I was looking for a new door handle, it's the driver's door handle, so it comes with a lock. And because of that, a lot of people are just selling their door handles with the locks from the scrapyard car on eBay, which is where I get most of my parts, for the record. Some person, they had the door handle with the locks, with the key that goes with the locks, with the ignition cylinder, and the trunk release. And because I assumed that I had the wrong ignition cylinder, and I said this would be my chance to have everything match up, so that I could use one key for everything. Turns out that wasn't the case, but that was my thinking. So I paid the extra $1 to get that set so that I'd have everything. And then afterwards, I emailed the seller asking if he knew the VIN of the vehicle that it was scrapped from so I could at least get a spare key. And he didn't. So I would have once again, if I had lost that key, I would have been in just as much trouble. 4 wires fixed. A couple of these still got cuts in them. I don't know how those are gonna short or what. How many more do I have? 1, 2, got 4 more. But in total, I now have 4 keys for this car. And one of them works in the ignition, not in the doors. One of them works in the doors, not the ignition. One of which is a Chinese one that works in both. And one of which works in a bunch of locks that I have sitting in a drawer. But owning a Jaguar is a splendid time, I tell you, aside from that. I'm being very aggressive on the shrink wrap. You probably don't need to be that aggressive, but it's alright. There's my long and expensive history on keys with these Jaguars. And if you've listened this far, thank you. Because most of what I'm doing right now, if you're actually using this as a tutorial purpose video, you don't really need to watch all this. Putting on belt connectors is pretty easy, but I enjoy listening to myself talk. So maybe you have a similar problem with your key. Maybe someone else has a defective key like I had. Very possible. Aside from the trunk release itself, I don't know if I've ever seen any words of those failing. I think this wiring harness is the main gist of what can go wrong in these trunks here. And I'm surprised I got all these wires here that were all broken, 2 of which were like critically broken, and that's a positive and a ground, I assume, and then a bunch of grounds for other things. So I'm not sure what to tell you because I don't know what those other wires do, because everything else seemed to work. Both these lights were lit up before. Well, they were lit up. Maybe they time out. I wonder what happens now if I push them off button. So far, nothing. Try not to burn yourself with the lighter. And if you do, not my fault that I taught you bad ways. I just showed you where the wires are. Everything else is not a tutorial no longer. Yeah, well, now, closest we're gonna get to calling repairs. I think the other ones, some of them are frayed, but the frays shouldn't be lining up, so they shouldn't be shorting. Actually, what I'll do is I'll just wrap a piece of duct tape around them. For now, though, I'm just curious. I'd like to see if this actually works. This harness wants to go that direction. And my harness is like a funky length now, unfortunately. Well, that's how that actually... Whoa. That's not what you said. That's how that clips in there, actually. That goes around there. Didn't even realize. I just yanked on it. My way worked too, I believe. Keys are on the seat. Sorry, it's a messy trunk here. This is a bunch of stuff that's got to be delivered to work here. Woo! That is infinitely better than it was when I wasn't doing anything. All these lights work too. Obviously, they just timed out. And that's how we leave it. We just jam her all back in there and call her good. Or we should do the right thing and actually start insulating some wires here. Okay, somewhere in this garage there should be duct tape. Electrical tape, sorry. I'm sure I used some not that long ago. All these tools in this garage, and the one I don't have is scissors. 1 wire. Any other wires? I think is it just 2? That one's got a nick in it. I think it'll be okay though. Fortunately, I don't think this loom is gonna work anymore. Now that we got all these butt connectors here, so I think I'm just gonna cut it off. And I'll just duct tape. Make my own loom. I actually have this loom here. Is it bigger diameter? It'd be very nice if it was, but I still don't know if I'll be able to fit 4 butt connectors in there. Looks to be about the same. Well, just for the shot. It's a shame because the loom before I damaged it was so nice, but obviously they don't build them very well. This part I want to keep as neat and tidy as I can because that's what's going underneath that sheathing there. That's good, they're actually not going to contact the plastic sheeting at all, which is, but connectors do add a small amount of length to the harness, which is why they're all bulging. Well, what can we do? Do I want to call that an adequate repair? Sure. Now, you guys didn't get to see the disassembly because I didn't really know what I was going to be getting into. Making a video, if you start a video and then find out you have no idea what you're doing, is not a very impressive video to make. Oh, don't do that. Now, this had 2 zip ties connecting the trunk strut to the harness itself. My mat back. Now I only got to dispose like 1,000 little pieces of wiring coating. I believe that's supposed to go down. I might have had that installed wrong the last time I was in here. Last time I went behind this panel was for the subwoofer, which is in the back window there. It was blown. I repaired it. It blew again because I didn't repair it properly. I repaired it with shoe glue, and it has given me no problem since. Why does that not line up? This one has been broken since I bought it. There's supposed to be a tab there that like holds it in there. This kind of has to... It's very important to make sure that this one lines up. I don't think I've ever used this trunk pull thing. I think I just close it from here usually. PSO last one. This is all you get. Oh nice. That one is failing too. Fairly soon here I'll have 2 of these hanging. What a terrible design that is. Unsuccessful. This one seemed content staying inside only with one of them. Why does the other one want to be so picky? It has one. Oh, did I just make it worse? Alright, you in. That is exactly how that's supposed to be mounted. And I put a lot of effort getting it where it's supposed to be. This one's missing a tab completely. That one, the next time I open the trunk, will fall out, but that's okay. And this is one fully reassembled trunk. Don't need that anymore. And all the lights work. Beautiful. This is the best it's ever been. If you made it this far, thank you for watching.